So if you'll recall, this is the 4th module in our ethics training from TEA. And our district's been very proactive in trying to bring you information to share with your campus so that when we have challenges, we at least have given all of our staff members the opportunity to know what's expected and to also operate within the legal framework of ethics. It also helps us keep our students safe. And this is not just a training for educators, it's a training for all employees because we're all role models. So this is focused towards educators because you're going to take this back to your campuses and work with your teachers and train before the end of January. Okay, so you have a little over a month. And anything else on that, Kelly?
Yes, and so what we're going to focus on today is really educators or any district employee and their role as a district employee and being a role model, and specifically focusing on conduct outside of school, which we don't always think about. When we were talking about, when Brad was talking about earlier about some of the things that we see on social media today about public education and some of the negativity that we see in public education, unfortunately, it's things that we'll talk about today which help spur some of that negativity. And so, you know, I know we're doing a great job of celebrating our stories and being proactive about all the positive things that we're doing in the district, but it just takes one negative social media post to undo all that positivity that we have about our district. And so we're going to talk about this today. And so what we want to do is have you go back to either your department or your campus and train your employees about the importance of being a role model inside school when you're at work, and then also outside on nights and weekends when you're out, you know, doing your social events. This is a requirement, and so we want it to be put in Power School so that we can keep track of all professional learning in one location. And so when you do train your staff, we want you to go ahead and create that course in Power School and make sure you have everyone in attendance. And so that way it's documented in Power School in case, unfortunately, we ever need to go back and have a crucial conversation with someone that didn't make the right choice. So that way we have that documented. And then we also want that to be done by the end of January, so January 31st. Mike from our communications team is videotaping our presentation here today, and then I'm going to send you the slides. But what I want you to remember is that all the good training and information from this presentation comes with your conversations and your dialogues with your employees. So if you just turn on the video and just show it and say, watch this, they're not going to get near as much out of it as if you stop periodically and have some of those conversations about what this might look like specifically for them. And so Jennifer's going to focus on some of the student aspects of it, and then I'm going to focus on some of just the employee aspects of it. And then, as always, we're open to questions. None of these scenarios are Coppell scenarios, so everybody who's had scenarios like this can take a sigh of relief that we're not going to call you out. So this is something that's just happened through the state of Texas. So Jennifer, I'll let you go ahead.
Along with your Google form, your slides, you will also have notes. So if by chance you wanted to look through the notes and determine some additional places to stop and reflect with your staff, that's very helpful with that. We will have some brief reflections today as we walk through this. So again, this is the 4th module out of 6 that TEA has offered us. Kelly and I went over the first couple of modules all the way through 3 at Administrators Academy, if you'll recall. We did use Coppell strategies during those. However, today, there's just so much material out there, you guys, because people make choices and they're not always positive choices. And at the same time, they don't always mean them to be negative choices. So we need to make people aware of what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, because we live in a time where things can be very misconstrued, and you might think something is appropriate and it's freedom of speech, those types of things when you're in your role. guiding our future, guiding students, we really have a huge responsibility, and eyes are always on us. So today, we're going to look at our responsibility. We're also going to look at the balance, because it's really important that we do have that balance. And at the same time that we know that no matter where we go, if I go into Ace Hardware, I'm still wearing the Coppell brand. So all of our staff members, no matter where we go, it's such a small town, you guys, that we are always representing Coppell ISD. So that's a double-edged sword. It's a blessing, and it's also, you know, a time that you just need to be aware that you never have that downtime, right? So today we're going to analyze and reflect on actions. We're going to look at our responsibilities, and we're also going to generate a list of red flag areas, looking at what could possibly be an issue, and we're going to review the fact that there are consequences when we don't follow or fall into the appropriate behavior. So as staff members, we're important role models for our students, but also for other staff members. We model ourselves after the people that we work with. We also model for our students every single day. Even though we're not here interacting with students, they see you in the hallway, and they notice. Students notice everything. If you're a parent and you remember bringing your baby home, your baby, that personality, that climate is going to be, they adopt your feelings. If you're a stressed out mom or dad, they're going to be a stressed out infant. It's the same thing with our students. There's great assurance in the majority of our educators, but what do we hear about the most? Negative most of the time, right? And we also have our students who have their own perceptions, and perception is reality. Whether it is the true reality or not, perception is reality. So let's talk about perception. What I want you to do is think about what influences a positive educator or a positive staff member have. What are those attributes? Think about those attributes, and at your table, I would like you to turn to your elbow partner and think of at least 2 attributes and share with your elbow partner briefly what you think a positive staff member in the field of education displays. I need you to share with your elbow partners. All right, wrap up this positive attribute. Who would like to share some positive attributes? Anyone?
I will share.
Rachel.
We listed enthusiasm, a team player, positivity, and a communicator.
Okay, those are great. Anyone else?
We said we got one of the biggest ones would be empathy.
Empathy.
We talked about that they should model respect for everyone they interact with.
We talked about being regulated.
That's so important. It's so difficult. All right, well, let's look at what our students said. Marilyn Price Mitchell conducted a research and on students to see what their role models, what they believe their role models, those attributes are, and this is what our students came up with. Are there any ahas? Look at the number 1. Passion and ability to inspire. That was the number 1 attribute of a role model named by these students. Look at commitment and community. I just thought that was very interesting that that was in the top 5. Let's look at some other role models in education. Who knows who these people are?
Stand and deliver.
Stand and deliver, right. So Students that were at risk to drop out were taught calculus and Stand and Deliver. If you've not watched that movie, it's a good one for the holidays, so get a blanket and a snack and watch. And we all know Rita, because every child needs a champion. TED Talks, right? So both of these people were role models, and they contributed significantly to the perceptions of education and to the positive impacts that an adult can have, just as a role model to students, but also to other staff members, because we interact with one another, we interact with other departments. It's not just our teachers. Unfortunately, we also have to remember that students are impacted by negative roles. And a lot of times our mind goes to the negative before the positive. And so we're going to look at some headlines here. And you're going to do an activity. It's called Name That Headline, True or False. So if you think it's true, thumbs up. If you think it's false, thumbs down. So I'm going to read a couple of these headlines, and you tell me true or false. Teacher busted for drugs, suspended by district. That could happen, right? Okay. It's true. True, true, true. Teacher resigns after twerking video. Teacher fired for stripping while on leave. True. High school principal lied about hypnotizing students. Do y'all remember this one? This is where the student committed suicide. It was awful. It was awful. After he was already told to stop hypnotizing students, he said, "I'm not anymore." And he continued, and the student ended up committing suicide. It was awful. Awful, awful. It is true. You can't make this stuff up. Text is on record setting pace for inappropriate student-teacher relationships. True or false? Y'all, that's true. Unfortunately, that is true. So given that all of these headlines are true, the actions of educators do not model behavior that we believe is positive. These are not positive role models. This is not acceptable behavior. And we need to make sure that people are aware of what is and is not appropriate. Also, the good news is that we have tried really hard as a district with as much negativity and negative press that's out there to tell our own story. So over the past years, we've really tried to tell the story of Coppell ISD in a positive way. And when you have something positive happening on your campus, please reach out to our communications department so that they can help spread that positivity. Because we don't want people looking towards negativity, whether it happens in Coppell or in the education profession in general, because a lot of times people relate that to Coppell ISD even though it's not in our district because of the negativity and the stigma of behaviors that are not appropriate. We strive to display the I Love Coppell, the I Love CISD campaign, so please help us with those. So let's look at some other top news. These are real life examples of media spotlight that are positive. So a thank you note to a teacher who saw what, this is a thank you note to a teacher who saw what no one else did. 11 education leaders had their lives changed by an amazing teacher. So that's someone coming back and talking about their experience with their teacher. Assistant principal organizes fundraisers for their students. These are all positive things, but you don't always see these in the media, right? So it's up to us to tell our story. We're going to look at this video, and this is where we really have to look at our actions in the environment, but we also have to know that our role exceeds these four walls. It pours out into society. It pours out into our community. And this is an example of a staff member who maybe doesn't make the best choices.
Educators have tremendous influence on students when modeling appropriate behavior, values, and knowledge. This professional responsibility exists both inside the classroom and outside of the school. Educators serve as role models, and their actions reflect the education profession and the community at large. This module will examine what responsibility educators have to their profession outside of the regular school day.
And there you have it, district champion!
We did it! We did it! We did it! I knew that we could do it!
Great job, guys! Oh, you did such a good job! That shot was incredible! Excited! Oh, this is so cute! You girls make yourselves at home! Thank you! Welcome!
We did it! 1, 2, 3.
Oh my gosh, this has been good! Alright, girls, let's go into the kitchen!
Toast. I know how hard you worked, and you guys deserve this. You guys will never forget this, and neither will I. I am so proud of you guys, and that's why we need to celebrate, and celebrate hard, so it's time to party!
Awesome. Yeah, no problem. I just sent it to the whole team.
Principal Smith, you wanted to see me?
Yes, Coach Martinez. Please come in and close the door. Have a seat. Do you know why I brought you here today?
No, ma'am, but I hope it's to congratulate us on our district win.
Unfortunately, something has overshadowed the great work that you and your team accomplished this season.
I don't understand.
Did you have a party at your house after the district game?
Yes, but nothing got out of hand. There was no alcohol, no drugs. I mean, we were just dancing. There was food, music. It was just a team and me.
I was made aware of this video from the party. Have you seen it?
Why would anybody do this to me?
I'm afraid you've missed the point. You are a teacher. You are a role model for these girls and all the students you teach. You are not their friend, you are not their dance instructor, and it's definitely not in their best interest to have their coach teaching them to dance in a sexually suggestive manner. In addition, you should not be hosting parties at your home where there are no other adults to help supervise.
I'm sorry, I didn't think it was inappropriate. We were just celebrating our win. We were just fooling around. I love those girls. I would never do anything to hurt them.
You are right, Coach. You did not think about the consequences of your actions. This is an extremely serious situation. This has gone viral. I've had board members, community members, parents, all demanding your termination.
What? No, please. Please, I won't do anything like that again. Just give me another chance.
Again, Coach, I'm sorry. You are placed on administrative leave until further notice. We will conduct a full investigation into this incident.
Unfortunately, these types of scenarios are occurring frequently in the state of Texas. The consequences of inappropriate out-of-school educator conduct are significant. It is critical to exercise good judgment and professionalism inside and outside of the classroom. Referring to state and local policies will provide a clear understanding of the expectations in your district and community.
All right, who would like to share? How can this have been avoided? Okay, don't have parties at your house, at your home,
Without other parents.
supervisory, or supervising staff.
Always assume things could be video, but she still didn't understand that was appropriate. I mean, that's what's sad. Right. You know, it's like the TikTok age and, oh yeah.
Everybody records everything and thinks it's cute.
Yeah.
How would you handle that if someone showed you that video? What would you do? In your role, think about your role specifically. What would you do?
Call Kelly Meyer.
Safe way to go. Call Kelly Myers. All right.
I mean, I think the principal handled it well. You know, she had that tough conversation, and I mean, you have to look further because all you have is that video, and it could have been worse than that. So you have to go believe until you know. So I think she handled it well. But I would have Kelly Myers.
In addition, our kids are very savvy when it comes to editing.
Yeah.
So it's important because a lot of times things are photoshopped. A lot of times things may appear to be one way and perhaps are not. So that's why there is usually an investigation into matters such as these. It is typical in some cases when it impacts students, and Kelly will go more into the staff portion of that, but it is not rare to put someone on leave if you're looking at a situation with students. So let's look, every community is different, and what may be okay in Coppell might not be okay in Grapevine, and what might be okay in Dallas may not be okay, and probably is not okay in Coppell ISD. So you also have to look at the culture of your community, and the standards vary depending on your community as well. So we've got to keep that in mind when we're talking to our staff about this. But let's look at how equally important it is to have positive role models. So with the increased social media, we've mentioned TikTok, Instagram, all of these different sources, it's local media coverage 24/7. The rules are different when you're in the field of education. Some people may disagree, but you really never stop and step out of your role as being someone that is in the field of education. It can be seen as a 24/7 job, especially if you are in the role beyond school hours, if you're in athletics, if you are in fine arts. Those types of roles extend, and so sometimes those boundaries also get blurred because you're with those students outside of a classroom setting, okay? I'm modeling looking at my notes. So Michael Simpson, he's the former Assistant General Counsel for the National Education Association, and he specialized in First Amendment and constitutional rights. He states that with the exploding popularity of social media networking sites, it's created an excessive interest in teachers' private lives by both school administrators and the media. Newspapers across the country search social media networking sites for scandalous postings by local educators. Unfortunately, there are many posts on these sites that meet this specific criteria. Our behavior outside of the school day is just as important as in the school day, and that's really what we need to stress to our staff members. So let's look at a couple of examples that demonstrate actions by educators outside of the school day that have created problems for themselves in the profession. During a teacher's personal time, he posted the following online comment on Facebook. Broadcasting to your online friends. Broadcasting to your online friends during your personal time about how much you hate your boss is not going to help your professional standing, especially if your boss is one of those online friends.
Wow.
With some of these posts, there are consequences, and in this case, many people both in the profession and out of the profession saw the post, so that created negative feelings towards a boss, also towards a colleague. Those should all be kept private to ensure that the professional relationship is kept intact. And the principal lost respect for this staff member and the trust, which, how would you feel if that was posted about you? Would you be able to remain neutral and work with that person?
No. I would also be mad at the teacher that commented ditto and spelled it out. Might even be more concerning.
Make him have an appointment with Anita.
They need Reading Academy.
Here's another one. In this online post, the teacher made a decision to tweet to all of her followers about being stoned. She also posted several pictures of herself in various states of undress. Anybody remember this case? It was in Colorado.
Well, Colorado.
She needs to switch to the babe, right? Okay, so these consequences for this teacher were life-changing. It ended up being loss of respect and credibility from her colleagues. Would you want to work with this teacher on your team? How would you feel about that? The actions of the teacher, even though it was outside of the school day, cost this teacher her job as well. And a lot of times when we're going to employ someone, we look at social media, we look at that digital footprint, and some of these things you can't scrub. And so there may be a situation where something comes back up 5 or 10 years down the road that you may or may not even know is posted, that someone saved and reposted with your name on it. It's always good to Google your name every once in a while just to see what pops up. Kelly's going to go into more of the employee aspect of ethics.
So we have conversations like this a lot with some of the educators that we employ who maybe are younger and they're just graduating from school, and you look at some of their Instagram or some of their Twitter posts and you see pictures of them on the beach or pictures of them doing things while they were in college. And so it's a good learning opportunity for them. I do that with my own kids who are 20 in college. Those things never go away, even though it seems innocent and fine when you're 20 or you're in college. Those things, when you graduate and become a professional and you have a career, regardless if it's in education or some other profession, they always follow you. And then people have a perception about you as an individual and as a professional employee. So this comes to the burning question: can you teach good judgment? Can you teach common sense? And some of these things we think, oh my gosh, that's just common sense, I would never do that. But we're seeing more and more people who maybe don't have as much common sense as we would like them to. And so the Harvard Business Journal put it and said it this way: Some people just have a flair for good judgment, whether it's an ability to identify issues or develop instincts to make sound decisions. Others simply do not. And so for those who have difficulty in making good decisions, we can always improve in this area. And so that's why we're doing these ethics trainings, because all of this, to us in this room, think just good common sense, we would never do that. But when we talk to individuals where we've had situations come up similar to these, they don't know that. And so it's our responsibility as leaders in this district to make sure that we're on the same page as what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, especially in our district. So there's some ramifications, and a lot of people like to say, well, I have freedom of speech. This was not something I did on a school computer. It was not something that I did on school time. It was when I was at home on my own devices, and I should be able to separate my professional life with my personal life, and I should be able to post and say whatever I want to say. But that is not correct when you're an employee and work in the education field, whether you're a teacher, whether you're an instructional aide, you're a clerical individual, you're an administrator, you're a director. We're all held to higher standards because we chose the field of education to work in. And so it comes down to the fact that if the district, if the community, if your principal, if your supervisor has lost the confidence in you to do a good job based on the actions that you do outside of work, then it affects your ability to be able to do a good job when you're at work. And so the reality of the situation is that school districts have the authority to enforce its interpretation of what is moral and what is professional amongst all of our employees. And so as much as we think we can say, what we want because we have freedom of speech, we are not free to say or post everything that we want to communicate to the world. Certain limitations do apply for educators and those that work in the field of education under these circumstances. So if you've lost your ability of the community to say you're a good teacher, if you had a child that was in this teacher's classroom, do you have the trust that this is a good teacher for your children? Absolutely not. If I saw this with any of my child's teachers, I would immediately have red flags that this person is a good teacher when they're working one-on-one with my child in the classroom. And if you recall, when we had our administrator training earlier this year in August, unfortunately we've had situations where teachers have posted inappropriate things outside of school on their own time in the summer that have popped up like this, that we've had to have some serious conversations about whether Coppell is a good place for them to be or whether public education is a good place for them to be. So we are always role models, no matter where we are or what we do. And this impacts our profession. It impacts our profession and our ability of how people see us in Coppell, but also impacts the profession as a whole across the state of Texas. And a role model is somebody who we want to imitate behaviors. So like Jennifer said earlier, when you're a new parent and you're wanting to raise your child, you want them to see you as a role model, and you want to make sure you behave in ways that they would want to imitate later in their own lives. That's the same way we are when we're working with kids, when we're working with coworkers, when we're working with our community. We want them to see us as role models and people they would look up to, because that's the way we want our profession to be seen across our community. So this is why ethics matters, and that's why we're doing these training sessions with you, because it is something that we're wanting to improve. It is something that can have some serious consequences if there's some legal ramifications to some of this, and that's why we have these conversations. So the general principle of law says that an educator's good moral character constitutes the essence of the role model that the educator represents to students both inside and outside of the classroom. So now that we've spent some time thinking about some of these, we're going to talk about some of the challenges that this might have. When you're thinking about what is inappropriate and what is appropriate to post on your social media, think about what our community expects for employees to do outside of their workday. And as Jennifer said earlier, Our community is specific to Coppell, so what may be something that is appropriate in maybe Dallas would not be something that's appropriate in Coppell. Our community expects that we're aware of our actions, that we reflect our profession and district positively, that we're demonstrating the highest level of professional judgment inside and outside the workday. We understand that as an employee, our presence within the community should reflect law-abiding, trustworthy, respectful citizens, and that we as educators, when we sign on, when we get that job in that district, we're signing on that we will abide by all of these expectations of our community. So at your table, I want you to discuss some of the challenges of this, and I know you've had challenges because we've talked about some of them. I've had some individual conversations, and some of you have teachers on your campus that think free speech is okay and that I can do that outside of the classroom. So that's some of the challenges that we have, is getting our employees to understand that yes, you do have free speech and we would never take that right away from you, but there are some limitations in how you portray yourself because you're a district employee. So let's take just a few minutes and talk about some of the challenges that you might see with some of your employees and what they may say, this is free speech, but on the other hand, how you would guide them to understand that yes, you have the right to free speech, but how will that affect you in your job? So let's talk about some of the challenges that our employees face when trying to navigate the difference between what's free speech and what would be okay to post outside of their own time on non-district technology devices versus what would be something that would be considered inappropriate. What are some of the challenges? Because this to me is probably one of the biggest issues that we face, is that gray area. And a lot of the hard conversations that I have in my office are with employees that think that what they did is perfectly fine, but it doesn't. It falls into that gray area. So what's some of the things that you discussed with your table?
We've talked, just mask versus non-mask, immunizations versus non-immunizations, political parties and things, and it's not just posting, but it's what you like. All of that. Yes, you can have an opinion. Yes, you can vote for who you want to vote. Yes, when there's the ability to have choice, you can choose whether to wear your mask or not. But in our community, clearly all of those were hot topics and continue to be. So those were some of the just very recent pieces we discussed.
Absolutely. What else?
We were talking about it's not only the actual incident, but it's how the employee reacts after the incident. There are some things that you could have grace and love and we're going to grow from this, but depending on how they react to that conversation can spin it many different ways.
I was talking about just like the new trend of, and I haven't seen it with like our teachers, but just kind of bashing our profession and just like talking about the burnout and the overworked and all that, and it just gets kind of like murky of like you don't love your job, or like I don't know, it's just kind of in that gray area to me.
Yeah, it's surprising to me when you see social media posts about our, not necessarily Coppell, but just teachers in general being negative about their profession. Or you also have to be careful, like Kristen said, with what you like. Because people are looking at that and they're seeing who liked it. You can kind of tell who likes what and who doesn't. And then also situations where maybe that person didn't post the original comment, but then there's comments underneath it that people look at, and even what you say as a response to something else can be looked at and scrutinized. So, it's a hard job. It really is. And so that's why we're bringing awareness to this. So that our teachers and our educators and our employees are aware that whatever you post or whatever you do is being scrutinized and talked about by somebody. Angela?
You don't want to post in what you think are closed groups, like the Dallas teachers groups, where they all vent to each other. But we all know people in that group, and they're all narking on each other.
They are.
So, there are Coppell teachers in there, and they're talking, and they're all just venting to each other, but everyone's sending screenshots to everyone else of what you said about your boss and district. So that's good to stop that stuff.
Yes, Yes, absolutely.
Because there really are no closed groups, not really. And y'all know our people, they like to sit on that stuff until they can need to use it for something. Maybe they don't like a teacher or a coach or a principal or superintendent, whatever. And they hang on to that until they need it. And then they use it and say, hey, well look, did you know this was said or this person did that? And it is tough. It's tough on all of our employees. It's not just teachers. It's all of us are at risk because, like Jennifer Kelly said, there's groups just trolling for any kind of negativity that they can latch onto. One of our teachers just, I think, innocently clicked on something that somehow got her attached to some political group. I don't know, there's not a month, there was a day that didn't go by without somebody sending me that link. I'm a former parent, Brad, or you might remember me, my kids graduated, whatever, whatever. But I just saw that this teacher liked this whatever. And again, great teacher, just innocently clicked on something and it has not gone away and will not go away. And it just keeps coming back up.
It does.
And then we've got to respond, because then it looks like if we don't respond, we're, supportive of it, but we also are trying to support our employees. We just have to be very cautious and careful now, because it's crazy.
Yes, we live in a very political world now, whether you believe one way or another. So it's way more than just posting pictures of alcohol or drug use or getting stoned. It's way more than that now. It's more politically charged than it ever has been in the past.
So another thing is, as Dr. Hunt said, we've had a situation that keeps cycling and coming up. That's the thing with social media. We can actually address it, but you've got to think too, how many man hours go into addressing each situation when we get anonymous tips or we get, hey, just letting you know that this person went to this event and they were unmasked, or can you address this, or they're teaching this in their classroom and they're not supposed to. Those cycle because they come back up, or people repost, or they like it, and then it triggers it again. And so it's just, you can never scrub it, you guys. So it's so important that we express to our staff members, be careful with your posts and your likes, because what you're posting could end up on the Dallas Morning News front page. And if you post with that in mind, you will limit your postings.
And if they're young and don't realize it could be a front page of a Dallas Morning News,
yes,
you might have to give a different example of that.
Then there's that.
I'll see it.
It'll be better.
Okay.
But can I ask a question? Because
Sure.
what we're into is parents are putting very negative things about an educator or a program, and our staff want to respond, and I always tell them no good deed goes unpunished.
No good deed goes unpunished, you're right.
We're public
Because
figures.
they want to defend that person that they know, but it's like,
You really can't do
Also
that.
too, Becky, where our communications team can help out, like, getting those screenshots of that information, because we may not post in that group, but we do our own set of trolling, if you will, to see what is being said about us in social media, and that helps us with, it's a little more reactive, but it does help us with what are the stories that we need to make sure that we tell. If there's some educational journal that has said something negative about one of our programs, what are the other journals that say something positive about the same program? If there's one parent that is unhappy with how we teach canoeing, but 80 parents love how we teach canoeing, let's not let that one parent be the focal point, but sometimes that is a parent that has influence, and then all of a sudden, what was not a problem to these 80, now it's like, well, we need to question that too. So I know it is hard because our teachers, our staff members, our employees want to be our advocates on social media too, but I think that's where communications has and can come in to help.
I think that's a great point, and in some cases, maybe not the one that you might be specifically referring to, because that one
There's a bunch.
well, I know, but there's one that I would do alone, but in a lot of cases, it's important that, it's why we have ILEAD, honestly. That they have been trained, so ILEAD 2, they've been trained as our social media ambassadors. And so they are looking for those ways that they can speak for us, and if we find a post like that, it just looks defensive. But when we have community members who love and care about this community, that's what iLead is all about. That's what they've been trained to do, and they know how to do it really well. So you're going to start seeing that more and more. If you haven't already noticed it, we have a group of people who are doing that, and they're like our secret little, social media ambassadors out there speaking for us. So no, that's what iLead is really all about. So just call us if you see it.
So these are just some of the obvious things that we want to caution our staff members with: attire, inappropriate language, pictures, things like that we've already really talked about. Social drinking, out of control drinking versus being at a bar with your friends. I mean, that's a gray area. I mean, everybody who's an employee is over 21, and they may post a picture of themselves, on vacation during the summer with an alcoholic beverage. But how is that? I mean, are they hanging off the bar? Are they looking like they're drunk? Or are they just having a sweet picture with their friends? I mean, it's different. It's different. Y'all are laughing at me, but this is
I'm laughing at myself thinking about what I have picture-wise.
Well, you know that's true. It is still very much a small town, and we've had parents, community members contact us about teacher grading papers at the bar at Enemy.
Yes.
I know, but you do. I'm busy, I'm working.
Drink for everyone.
And maybe they weren't even drinking at all, but just you're in a bar. Like that movie, you're in a bar with your baby. You're in a bar.
With your papers.
Don't do it there, Just put your papers in the car and go have a drink if you want to. Just the whole context of that is bad.
And see, the teacher would think, I'm just multitasking while I'm waiting for a table, So we have to talk through those scenarios so they understand, probably not a great idea, especially if you have a margarita right there with you.
And then what's the judgment? Are you really judging this person's paperwork? When you have your under the influence of alcohol. We have to talk about employment, hobbies outside of work, anything that would be illegal, like theft, drugs, assault. So anyway, there's some pretty significant consequences if you engage any of these things, and the district has lost the confidence it has in you to be an appropriate employee of the district. Number one, it can rise to the level of us reporting to TEA that we're required to do by law. And then when we report to TEA does an investigation on their own and then decides whether or not they would invalidate a teacher certificate or flag a teacher certificate or reprimand. There's always district reprimand, administrative leave, is an option that we have if we suspect some inappropriate behavior. We can terminate individuals because of a social media post, because we've lost our confidence in the ability for them to do their job, and it's created substantial hardship on the campus or the district. And then we've had, unfortunate, some situations that have landed in incarceration. So these are things that no one wants to face. And so as you remember, when you were going through school, you may not remember that Educator Code of Ethics is something that was reviewed when you're going through your educator programs, and that's not just for teachers, that is for every employee. Whether you're a teacher, whether you're an aide, whether you're a clerical, food service, bus driver, administrator, director, we're all bound by the Code of Ethics. And so when we have conversations with employees about potential violations, this is always where we go back to, is Educator Code of Ethics and what defines moral character. So the last part of this presentation, I just want you to have some brief conversation with your table about how you'll take this back to your department and how you'll take this back to your campus, and what are some of the things that you want to highlight with your employees when you're going through this presentation. You'll have the notes, you'll have the video, but like I said before, some of those conversations is where we really learn and get the most out of it. So just brainstorm real quickly about how you would take this back to your department or campus and what things you want to highlight with your staff. Okay, let's come back together one last time, and let's hear maybe some of your ideas about how you might present this to some of your staff. What are some of the ideas that you want to make sure you emphasize when you roll out this training? Do we have any thoughts on what might be a good way to get this across specifically to our teachers? And we really do have their best interest. And so we want to make sure they're aware. So what are some of your thoughts on how this might be most effectively presented?
I think it's a good presentation, and I think Nancy, were you going to talk? It's a good presentation, and it's one of those things that it's just thinking about things, and it's being more reflective about maybe I should be a little more wary about this particular thing. We were having a conversation about sometimes if, like, you know, whatever age you are, but sometimes our younger teachers may have friends that are not in education and you're outside of the field, and so things that may be acceptable to a different level may not be the best right there for that. And so I think that it's just making people very cognizant and aware of those kinds of things. That's what our discussion.
Yeah, I can imagine some of our younger teachers maybe not saying anything during our presentation, but their wheels are turning in their head and they're thinking about everything that they may have on their Instagram account. What their friends have.
I think that's what we talk about over here is like, there's no longer a private anything. It's not private because even if you're not the one posting, and even if you're not the one doing it, someone is taking a screenshot, someone is recording you, someone could have their phone under the table recording you. Like literally nothing is private anymore. And I think I was reflecting back on like when I was growing, when I say growing up, because I'm 45, but like I was the only one with a camera taking pictures of things, and it wasn't like everybody had a camera because it was 2004 or 2003, and you know the digital cameras were not a thing. And I think now social media, like I love that local news thing you said. Is like local news is everybody in the room. And like, no matter what, like you just gotta assume literally nothing. Even like a conversation at a table with people who love you right now, you never know. Because they could get mad at you for something you say. It's just terrible. Like that part is just, you have to be so careful about it. And I'll just end on, and I'm just reflecting myself, is like, it's almost virtually impossible to be a human being and make mistakes and not have the ability to, you know, I don't know, it's tough. You have to be really careful.
It's hard.
It's a higher standard, you know, I mean, it is.
I know, but it's just, that's when you wonder why education is becoming, you know, less and less people are wanting to do it. There's just, with social media and with everything, it's hard to be a human being, you know?
Well, and one thing that our group talks about too is almost that you want, like, the job is hard, and a lot of our folks really are burned out, and their caseloads are high, all the things. And so it's almost like this misery loves company idea, and you want somebody to witness your struggle, and so you, like, I see it a lot where our folks will kind of just say something, and maybe it starts out innocent, but you're right, those comments get going, and it's like, man, this is really, this took a tough turn, but like, you are responsible for everybody else's comments if you're the one that started the, oh, this has been the worst day ever, and I don't know why I do this anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sarah, you had something?
I also think we might need to show them some positive examples, because I think sometimes when we talk to them about this, they just think like I shouldn't post anything at all. And like the other day I was scrolling TikTok and one of my teachers here like came up and I was like, oh Lord. I clicked on it and I watched every single video that she's made, and all of them are like, here's a resource I can share for classroom management. Like it was positive, and it said good things about our profession, and it was the right way to use social media to celebrate the good things that are happening in that classroom. So I think sometimes they need to see that too, because there are people using it in a really positive way, and we don't always talk to them about that part.
Completely agree. That's a great idea. Amanda?
I just wanted to say, Angela, if you haven't noticed, we made a very intentional decision with our social media this school year to focus only on positive stories. Like we didn't post any news on social media, masks, no masks, you know, virtual, all that. That was done on the website and that was done via email. And to help, everything that we've been posting is all been positive, and our comments have really reflected that compared to other school districts and other things last year. So our social media could be an example, but I
have lots of reflection during this training because people are at different places. And so those examples, I think, are important. Then also back to that opening scenario with that young coach. And I think her intentions were good. One of our core values is relationships. She could have done the exact same thing with just some few alterations. Instead of her home, maybe it's at one of the parents' house. She's not the only adult there. You know, red Solo cups are synonymous with other things. So even though those other things weren't in there, you see red Solo cups. And you see, and doesn't mean we don't want our, you know, coaches and teachers and employees to have a great relationship with their kids. Of course we want them to. But it's got to be appropriate, and it's got to, and you also have to put yourself in a situation that is not going to set yourself up. One of the kids said, well, I sent it to the rest of the team. Okay, so the whole team wasn't even there. So you know one of those parents someday is going to sit on that and say, hey, you know, head principal and head coach and AD, this person needs to go because she only or he only has his favorites at their house and all that. So again, just having conversations about what it could and should look like. Mary's great about Twitter, and Brooke, y'all do all those slow chats, and you know, at night when you're doing different kind of PD, but it's all about some certain topic. I mean, just those kinds of things I think are great examples, and that's what people need to hear and know that some of those, you know, clearly obvious. Smoking in the car and all that. Yeah, it's those other things that are a little more gray, like Kelly and Jennifer said. We just have to help our employees realize what does it look like and what does it not look like, because none of us want to be on the news. None of us want our teachers to be on the news. Anything negative about our district or anything about education goes back to what Nancy's saying too. It's hard enough to be in education right now. We don't need any more ammunition for the folks that are really trying to bring down public ed.
Well, and I have one more kind of lens I want to make sure that you guys think about and discuss, because we spent a lot of time talking about the younger teachers, but I think there also needs to be discussion about, okay, I'm an employee, but I'm also a parent, and so I'm having kids over because they're friends of my kids, and what that role potentially needs to look like, and what awareness needs to be, because we want them to be a parent, we want their kids to have friends and to have relationships in those ways. But again, you just have to think about that and be aware of what's going on, because pictures can be taken, videos can be taken, you know, conversations can be overheard if kids are spending the night and those kind of things. So I think that's an area to make sure you focus on as well, that sometimes we forget, and that ends up, you know, in HR for a variety of different reasons.
Joseph.
One of the things we talked about, yeah, I promise, just allergies. One of the things that we did discuss, and I try to remember a lot of the time, is sometimes their ability, first off, to be a good role model may not cross an ethical line, but it may cross that role model line. And I think emphasizing that piece of it is also, I think a lot of people are not necessarily, I say a lot of people, I've dealt with a few teachers this year that have not been great role models, and it's because from a social emotional perspective, they're not okay. And so making sure that we are supporting them and making sure that they understand what resources are available to them, that this is a good profession that will protect you and will take care of you if you're dealing with those things. But it can't manifest in a way that's going to affect your ability to be a positive role model for our community.
That was on your list about how the kids respected how they handle when they don't go well.
So gone are the days where we can just think that everybody understands and has a common understanding of what we think is logical or what we think is typical behavior. So best practices when we're working with our students, if you look at positive behavior supports, is to give that structure, to give those expectations. So we would be remiss as leaders if we didn't spell out what the expectations are to our staff members. Just as in the classroom, teachers have those routines and rituals, and they educate their students on what is expected and when, behaviorally. We have to do the same thing with our staff members. And so that's what this training is for. It's an opportunity to create conversations, to create an awareness that may not already be there with our staff members, and an opportunity for them to grow and to learn and to really turn into reframing kind of what they're posting and what their thought process is before they post. So that's, I think,
That's all we have for this morning, so I appreciate your time, and it was a great conversation, so thank you for that.